Serious, parents of Reddit, what was a legit reason why you didn't let your son/daughter have that friend over go to her sleepover? My friend and her sister could sleep at our house but my sister and I couldn't sleep at theirs. In college I figured it out. Their house was a fire trap. Pathways between stuff like a hoarder's house. The bathtub was full of dirty water constantly. You had to move stuff just to use the toilet. The stairs to the basement, where we would have slept, covered in clothes and only one way out of the basement. The windows were too small to crawl out of if you were larger than an average 2-year-old. Saw the inside of the house years later and it was like a different house. They had a piano in the living room that I'd never seen before because it was just covered in hoarder crap. Kid was on serious medication for major behavioral issues. The kid's sibling was the favorite. Parents were dump set and wanted kid at our house, without medication because it was good to take a break from antipsychotics. I say and wanted kid because he'd come over on an empty stomach and left for hours after the promised pickup time, while they took the other kid out to eat and shop. They also didn't offer snacks, drinks and eventually banned reciprocal visits. It sucks that the parents were shitty. Kid tried to commit suicide at one point and was institutionalized where, wonder of wonders, not taking a weekend break from medication left him much more stable. Edit to answer. This happened about 10 years ago. CPS got involved after the kid was institutionalized and things got better for him at least. The ban on reciprocal visits happened after there were some strong words about their parenting decisions. Having kids doesn't fix relationship problems. When I was a kid my house was like a soup kitchen. Kids who had shitty home lives around my neighborhood would come over and hang out. My dad didn't care if they were at the house as long as they followed the rules. Some kids would push back on the rules. My parents don't care if I do this. My dad would always say okay fine you can go home and do this, then he would hand the kid the phone and tell him to have his parents come get him. I never saw any of the kids actually call home. They would just toe the line. Looking back I just thought my dad was weird but now I realize he was actively pulling kids out of bad situations and offering them an alternative to their crappy home lives. I remember one particular month we planned a trip to a theme park and had 4 or 5 random neighbor kids come with us. Kind of redefined my understanding of the old saying that it takes a village to raise a kid. He was a complete a-hole with no respect for adults. Breaking point was when he put bleach in a spray bottle and chased our 5-year-old around spraying him. His mother apologized hard. Never again. To hell with that kid. Were the parents aware? She let them go in the backyard with her 13-year-old to watch them. He filled the spray bottle up with bleach secretly without anyone knowing apparently and took him behind a shed and held him down and sprayed him. When he started screaming is when the sister realized something was up. He was drenched in bleach. His skin was irritated all over from it. I told her he would never be allowed over there again. His mother was crying saying she couldn't control him. My wife and I were shocked as we didn't anticipate anything like that could happen on a playdate. Our little guy is very sensitive and took it very hard. He told me when I was taking him to school that he didn't want to play with him anymore and that he's not a nice person and makes him cry. I should emphasize this kid is also 5 and slightly younger than ours. He walked down to our house by himself one day and I told him he is not welcome in our house. He asked why and I told him because he does bad things. I then walked him back home. No one in his house knew he had left. I told his mom that our child would no longer be playing with him. She said that I was being overdramatic and that they were just kids. I told her that if she thinks this is kid behavior she was in for a rough life when he gets older and reminded her she said herself that she couldn't control him and he's 5. What does she think is going to happen as he gets older? She didn't say anything. I told her to let her son know to not knock on our door again. My parents went to drop off my stuff at a friend's house because I wanted to spend the night. They walked in, and my dad said nope you're coming home. She had 2 brothers. One was super nice. One was very touchy. Her dad then threatened my dad and said he can't take a child out of his home without his permission. My dad being 6'3" and a large dude got in his face. Her dad looked like a string bean and said he was taking me home right now. My dad told me later he had a really bad gut feeling something bad would have happened if I stayed. Her touchy brother is in jail now. For what I'm not even sure. Whoa 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 whoa. Your friend's dad said that your dad couldn't take you home without his permission? Did I read that right? That's exactly what he said to my dad. Since I was in his home, I couldn't leave without his permission. You can't take a child out of my home. This is my home. And I said she's staying is what I remember being said. I honestly thought my dad's head was going to explode after this dude said that and meant it. Wait, what? My head is spinning right now at the thought of what I would do if someone said that to me. I think you were in a lion's den not just from Touchy Brother but from Weirdo Dad. Maybe Touchy Brother learned from his Weirdo Dad. Thank goodness you didn't stay. I was a situation that set off my early warning senses. We were staying at the house of the daughter of my in-laws' friends. She had a 3-year-old son. My daughter was 5. They played well together. But I got some weird vibes that told me that my daughter shouldn't be crashing in the living room in a sleeping bag. I had her sleep with my wife in the guest bed while I slept on the couch. I kept a close watch on the kids the rest of the evening. The next day as we were leaving, the 3-year-old basically tackled my daughter. He was big, she was very small, and tried to mount and hump her on the floor. I extracted her and told him that wasn't appropriate. My daughter laughed it off as him trying to wrestle with her. Once in the car I told my wife under no circumstances would our daughter ever be allowed back in that house. Ever. She agreed. We later learned that the then boyfriend of the woman with the son used to let the boy watch hardcore porn with him. Mom found out when CPS got involved. He is destructive and has some unmedicated issues that affect his interaction with other kids. The kid doesn't play, he just upturns bins, throws things around and breaks stuff. My son is growing out of this kid. The kid is very sheltered and doesn't have the behavioral therapy that the doctors recommend, so he is just too much for my oldest and now my second to deal with. So that means the requests for him to come over are drying up. They really have nothing in common anymore. I had to hide our Xbox anytime he came over after he broke multiple games and couldn't understand why the shattered CD wouldn't work and why we were mad. Damn. Do the parents say anything about it? They know he has issues. He's been diagnosed but they won't medicate. They asked my advice once and didn't like my response because I said I would choose medication and they offered therapy. They believe he is gifted and sensitive, so they shelter him quite a lot, which means he is so emotionally immature compared to other kids his age compounded with his mental problems. I'm watching my kids outgrow him because they have interest on par with their age group and he is still at the 3-year-old range with everything. He is just a tornado. He doesn't interact. It is sad to watch this happen as they grow up. It actually broke my heart when I mentioned offhand how my kids had to turn down 2 party invites one weekend because they could only attend one party that Saturday. Also, I didn't feel like buying 3 separate gifts, and his mom said he hasn't received one party invite from one kid in his school. Your kids are the only ones who invite him over. I was sad hearing this because my kids have told me recently they can't handle him anymore. I no longer allowed my son's best friend to come to our place or for him to go over to his after the best friend's mom reported us to the police as harboring a runaway. This was after the best friend had been tossed out of his mom's house and told to spend the night sleeping outside and she'd refused our phone calls to find out what was going on. So yes, I wasn't going to let a 16-year-old spend the night in 30-degree weather with nowhere to go. Sue me. The cops showed up. Said she'd reported us as harboring a runaway. We explained what was happening and got treated like dirt and told that from now on we had to have full permission from the mom. Fine. We urged my son's friend to go to the police, report to them what was happening, and left it at that. The mom tried to apologize 3 days later as being off her meds and say it was okay for my son to go to their house and vice versa, and I politely refused and hung up while she was screaming at me. I'd always been kind of uncomfortable with the woman and that just sealed it. They were still friends at school, but there were no more hanging out at either one's house and I explained why and they both agreed to the rules. The son is in the military now and doing quite well and no longer has contact with his mother. Gee, I wonder why. Sounded like a trap. Vice versa. Yeah, that's what I thought too. I hated it, because he and my son were part of a big group of kids that would all hang out at each other's houses all the time. And suddenly I had to worry about this woman freaking out or doing something to my son if he was over there or accusing us again if my son's friend came to our house. Fortunately there was a third friend who this kid's mom was not mad at yet, so they'd all meet up over there. I warned them about it and the dad, who was military, basically nicely asked and recorded this kid's mom consent every time without her knowledge since we live in a one-party state. He told me, yeah, Let her send my cousin who works at the PD to my house to tell me I'm harboring a runaway. We both kind of hoped she'd do it, but she got mad at one of her other sons and started a whole war with him, so I guess we were all off the hook a bit. Crazy times. He was a little kleptomaniac. He came over exactly 3 times to hang out. Each time something would go missing. No more visits. Found out recently he was recently charged with embezzlement at the company he used to work for. I hated not letting the child sleep over, but that would have meant that my child would have wanted to sleep over at his house. His mother was living with a very abusive man who raised every single hair on my neck. This man taped off areas where my son's friend could walk and sit, rationed food, etc. I was not about to let my son be in that environment. The friend started acting out from abuse. I had already talked to the school counselor about my suspicions and CPS was involved. It was hard to explain to a child of 8 why this friend couldn't come over. Yeah, honesty may not be the best policy on this one. It is so hard because so many people think that anything but complete honesty can fuck up a kid. I am all for sharing stuff with kids, but in an age appropriate way. But you also have to be mindful they repeat stuff. You don't want to put the other kid in a dangerous situation with an unstable parent because your kid decides to be a little too honest. It is a real balancing act. For example, our 2 kids are friends with a pair of siblings. The parents were nice enough at first. Now, the father is so needy and whiny that my husband doesn't want to hang out with him. I had the youngest over for a play date and the mom dropped the kid off for 3 hours and didn't stay. I told the kid no to a few things and it was like I was the only one who dared to say it. When our kids ask to make a play date, we try to find a time we can limit how long it will go. We tell our kids how to establish boundaries. If I told them, sometimes X and Y's parents are annoying so we need a break, would likely cause issues. She was a chronic liar. My daughter met her in kindergarten. She lied constantly, about everything. One day my daughter asked us to help her put together a birthday card and make a homemade present for her friend's birthday. But when she brought the gifts to school it turned out the girl had lied about what day her birthday was. I didn't want to put down my daughter's first good friend, but I refused to have them spend more time together than was necessary. I was relieved when she started ending every story about something her friend had said with, "It's probably not true though." She outgrew that friend after a few months. Met the girl's parents later in the year. That poor kid never had a chance. Edit. I should have realized I left some next time on Dragon Ball Z type shiz at the end of my last comment. The parents were concerned with themselves. They were divorced, and the mom was living with her new boyfriend. I got into a conversation with the mother during after school pickup. Parents let the kids run around on the playground with friends so there's some time to kill. Anyway, first half hour into our first encounter she goes into several major scandals between her and her ex-husband and or boyfriend. Some of it pretty sexual in nature. One thing she always said was, "Can you believe he'd do X horrible thing to my daughter," regardless of whether the daughter had been involved. I got the vibe from them that their daughter was a pawn, and that their home life was chaotic. The ex-husband had face tats, a record, and he asked an elementary school teacher if he could bring beer to field day. The field day thing happened much later, long after my daughter stopped hanging out with the other girl. Sometimes when I think my life is chaotic or messy I think of them. Edit. Damn, you guys have some crazy stories. I had a similar friend growing up. We actually had a falling out and I was over her. Then my teacher, 5th grade, took us aside and tried to force us to be friends again. The falling out didn't even happen at school. The girl actually took words that she said, claimed I said it, and came up with the crocodile tears during that intervention from the teacher. That's when I learned that teachers weren't gods and I was making the right choice limiting time around this girl. I had a friend when I was 14 who did something very similar. I liked the same boy she did, and unfortunately that boy preferred me to her, or at least showed me more attention. We had a huge falling out over it. At our school we had to an expedition thingy. It's called Duke of Edinburgh Award in the UK. You get dumped in the mountains for a weekend and have to find your way to a point by yourselves. And our teacher decided to make us friends again by forcing us to be orienteering buddies. It was a fucking nightmare. The girl filled my water bottles with mud, tipped all my food away, told the other girls on the trip I was a lesbian and to not give me any water. hid the maps from me, repeated threw rocks at my head as we were hiking, would wake me up every half an hour by kicking me in the shins, throwing my deodorant into the bushes, etc. In the end I snapped, and about a mile from the finish I hiked off on my own. Once I met my teacher, she couldn't understand why I wasn't in my group. I explained what had happened on the trip and she said we would discuss it on Monday. We were pulled into a meeting room and asked to explain ourselves. The other girl burst into tears and recounted every single thing she had done to me, but the other way around. I had no proof and no defense, as she'd told all the other girls I was gay. 2 of the other girls came forward and corroborated and embellished her story. I got kicked off the program and suspended 15 years later. It still horrifies me that the teacher refused to support or listen to me. Thank you for watching, and like if you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe for daily Reddit videos.